a golf club in Tacoma for a wedding once, and we got in trouble for smoking cigars.
That's like the most like golf clubby thing to do. Like, were you in the nursery where people like stick their babies while they golf?
Welcome back to Cartridge Based Radio. I'm Donald, once again joined by Brad.
Hello!
Brad, what is your favorite thing to do while shopping?
Find whatever the heck I came there for and get out so I don't have to be shopping anymore.
What do you think about shopping between the hours of like 6 p.m. and let's say 2:30 p.m. the next day?
So we're talking about like a 20-hour time span there?
Yeah.
I'd say shopping from 6 till 9, 10 o'clock, fairly normal. You get dinner and then you go buy whatever you need and call it. After 10 o'clock, from 10 to midnight, I guess like maybe an emergency grocery run or something like that. And after midnight, there's really no excuse not to be in your home playing Skyrim.
We're quickly coming upon Black Friday, which is an abysmal holiday for all the reasons where people stay up too late thinking they're getting great deals. And this brings us to a very special episode of Cartridge Race Radio, where Brad is going to tell us about the horrors of retail.
Yeah, I may have alluded to it a few times on the show before, but from 1996 till 2000, I worked at an electronics boutique in a mall in the Western New York area. Despite the stories that you're about to hear, it was actually one of the more fun jobs that I've ever had. The staff of a game store, nobody's getting paid very much. It's all like youngish, college-age people. Gaming wasn't super diverse, so it was pretty much all guys. You get a bunch of guys around the same age together, they're gonna have some fun. I have a lot of fond memories of that job. In spite of that, there were times that were trying.
So, did you ever work the dreaded Black Friday at this job, or was that not a big thing back then?
This was like probably the peak of Black Friday, like from 96 to 2000. The internet existed, but it wasn't really the way it is now. It wasn't an easy way to shop. I don't think Amazon had really... I think they existed by the end of my run there, but they weren't huge like they are now. It wasn't the kind of thing where you're just like, I'm going to do all my Christmas shopping off of Amazon and not have to go to the mall. So the mall was the place to be. Black Friday was bad. Honestly, the Saturday right before Christmas was usually even worse than Black Friday. And surprisingly, the day after Christmas was usually really busy.
We gotta return the crap you didn't want to get the stuff that you do want.
Yeah, and you gotta spend all them gift cards.
That's right. No need to save them for another day. Gotta spend them right away. So I like choices. Give me a couple topic choices here.
Okay. Would you like to hear about some store pranks that we played on each other? Would you like to hear a Christmas horror story or a celebrity encounter?
I do like horror, so I will pick Christmas horror story.
Okay, so I've got two Christmas horror stories for you. One is a little darker than the other. I think we'll start with that one. But this was my very, very first Christmas working at the store, and I was hired as a holiday temp originally. So I had been working there for probably less than a month. And it's a Saturday, it's November, it's busy. And this being 1996 Christmas season, Nintendo had paid Electronics Boutique to put N64 displays in all the store windows, like across the entire chain countrywide. So we have like an empty display box of a Nintendo 64 and then like some just generic wrapped presents. And you can't actually get a Nintendo 64. Like it is the hot toy of the season and nobody has them. And we've got fake boxes in our window, and if you come in and try to buy one, we're like, well, we'll put you on a list, you might be able to get one next summer. And understandably, this led to some tension at times. a lot of the times we could diffuse it by telling people about the PlayStation, which was a better system, especially at that point in time when the Nintendo 64 didn't have a lot of games out. A lot of people ended up buying PlayStations and being satisfied with it, coming back later on, buying more games and everything, and they were happy with how it worked out. But so one time, guy comes in, and as soon as he came in, you could smell the alcohol on him. And he's just like, I want to buy Nintendo 64. And we're like, well, we don't have any. And he's like, it's in your window. And we're like, that's just an empty box. He's staggering around the store and like trying to lighten the situation a little bit. I'm there with my assistant manager, who also had been working there for like 3 weeks at this point. And I'm just like, we could say the empty box. Not the right course of logic to take with a guy who was already like staggeringly drunk. It did not lighten the situation. And he tells us, I'm a lawyer, and I know that if it's in your window, you gotta sell me one. I suspected he might not have really been a lawyer, and I based that suspicion not only on his staggering drunkenness in the mall, but also the fact that he was wearing his Radio Shack name tag. So I'm like, hey, Bob from Radio Shack, I don't think that's true. Any of it. The part about it being the law that we have to sell you one, and the part about you being a lawyer, it might be time to leave the store. So he's arguing some more, and his hands are getting a little more active. And the assistant manager's behind the counter, and he's facing the assistant manager, so all these gestures are kind of headed in the direction of his face. And it's making him nervous. And finally, it's like, Brad, go get security. And, me being 18 and just full of machismo, I'm just like, I'll take him out. And it impressed the assistant manager, but all the same, he's like, you should probably just get security. So I go down and I find a guard almost immediately, and I'm like, we've got a disruptive customer. You have to help us. And the guards are like 18, 20-year-old too. And they're just looking at each other like, what do we do? But they come down and they're like, oh, it's Bob from Radio Shack. So they kind of take him by the arm and they're like, come on, Bob, let's get out of the store, leave these people alone. And they take him back to Radio Shack to finish his shift because he was on duty, drunk off his ass.
Just swing by Auntie's Pretzels, get him something to sober up.
What's really weird is in that mall, like the Auntie's Pretzels was actually right across from the Radio Shack. So we're like 5 stores down the hallway. I don't know, maybe he did get a pretzel, I don't know. But we called the store manager and he's like, take the Nintendo out of the window. It's not worth anybody like getting assaulted over, if Nintendo really has a problem with it, we can deal with it. I don't think it ever actually happened at our store that we know of, but like they would have like people that they would hire and pay like, $50 to go into a store and just make sure that the displays were up. So that was a concern.
Seems like a good use of money there. Go make sure a display is up.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure they were probably paying a lot to have it up there. That was the more depressing of the Christmas stories. We've got another one that is actually, the outcome's actually pretty terrible, but it's more amusing. So this was probably the very next year, 1997 Christmas. We sell a guy a used Sega Saturn at some point, maybe in November or something. So he buys this used Sega Saturn. So it's Christmas Eve. We're open till late, maybe like 11 o'clock. Normally, we could wrap up the store in like 15 minutes. There's a couple of things that if there's no customers in the store, you can start doing ahead of time, like vacuum the floor, count up some of the money, stuff like that. But when it's Christmas and it's busy, you just get stuck doing all of that like after you pull the gate. At this point, it's probably like 11:30, 11:45. Like it's almost literally Christmas Day. Me and the guy that I'm working with, Ultimate Tom, we're just trying to get out of it.
Wait, pause.
Yes.
Ultimate Tom?
Ultimate Tom, yes.
He's like the ultimate Tom that has ever existed.
He is. He actually, I think he probably is the ultimate Tom. He's great. He was, I don't think he shrunk since then, but he was like 6.5 feet tall, built like a football player. A little intimidating when you first meet him because it's, like this big, strong guy who like towers over you, but really funny guy, very smart, just a great guy. And, I still see him every time I go back east to visit. visit. We get together. But he was the best guy to work with.
Even if it's a lie, tell me his name tag said Ultimate Tom.
We'll say that it did.
Okay. Anyway, store closing, you're vacuuming.
Yeah, it's like quarter to midnight of Christmas Day. We're just trying to get home. And the phone rings. And the guy's like, the Saturn doesn't work. You guys sold me a defective Saturn. I'm coming in to return it. And we're like, no, we're closed. This call probably came like 11:05. So we were already closed, but it wasn't super late yet. You know, I'm like, I'm sorry, man, we're closed. Like, you know, you can come the day after Christmas and we'll swap it out for whatever. You know, like full credit. You can get a refund. You can get something else. You can get another Saturn. And he's like, no, Christmas. And we're like, yeah, we'd like to get home to spend it with our families. Maybe you shouldn't have like checked this at 11 o'clock at night on Christmas Eve. So we tell him, can't help you, man. Well, 11:45, this guy's outside our gate, and he's like, you gotta do something about this Saturn. The register's off. Like, we can't record a transaction. We don't have another Saturn in the store that we can just hand him one and be like, here you go. There is nothing we can do, and we've just been through a Christmas. We want to go home. You know, it's been like 2 months of nonstop bombardment. And the guy's like upset and yelling at us, and finally we're just like, we're not opening the gate. We can't help you. Sorry, man. Come back on the 26th. So he finally leaves, and he's storming off, and like he's already out of sight, but he's in the hallway, and you can hear him. He shouts back at us, you ruined my kid's Christmas! And Tom, that irked him enough that he went from behind the counter. He ran out. The gateway to get behind the counter was towards the back of the store. He comes out. He runs around the edge of the thing, comes back around, runs out to the gate, and like leans on the gate, and he's like, you're the one that bought him a Saturn!
The internet wasn't as robust as it is now, so you wouldn't know that the Saturn was... Well, no.
This was 1997. This was late 1997. They were already throwing dirt on the coffin.
Didn't the dirt start falling on it on release day?
They were patting down the dirt to make it nice and even with the rest of the ground.
We're gonna build a Dreamcast factory here. So, you ruined Christmas.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Saturn would have done it anyway. So, we just kind of accelerated the ruining of Christmas by about an hour or so.
Did he buy any games with it?
I don't remember.
Boy, wouldn't it be a great story if the actual reason it didn't work is because there was no disc in the drive?
It's like, what? This doesn't just, like, come with a game about Saturn? Somewhere on it.
Neil deGrasse Tyson just pops up on the screen in a badly compressed video. Hi, I'm here to talk about Saturn. That would be a great system.
That actually would be pretty great. Every year for Christmas, we would hire temps. Our staff was only about 5 people. You know, it was not the busiest store in the region. We would have 2 full-time people and 3 or 4 part-timers to kind of cover the night shifts. But Christmas would come around, we'd hire usually about another 4 temps. So almost doubling our staff size. And we got some good people that way. I came in that way. A couple other people that we ended up keeping after Christmas all came in that way. And, you know, we got some good employees that way. You know, you're not always getting the best and the brightest when you're just hiring somebody for a couple of months. We had one guy that quit in the middle of Christmas season because he got a job at a sponge factory. He was a strange guy already. We had 2 guys that were kind of interesting hires, and the first was a guy named Jeff. And we already had a guy named Jeff on the staff. So we needed a way to determine which Jeff we were talking about. Well, Jeff that we already had was African American. And we're like, well, we're not going to call him Black Jeff and White Jeff. Like, that feels really wrong. It seems kind of racist. We're not going to do that. The Jeff that we already have was also a little bit more of a heavyset guy. And we're like, well, we're not going to call him like Fat Jeff and Skinny Jeff. Like, that's also like really inappropriate. And we're like, how are we going to, you know, differentiate which Jeff we're talking about? And it was like old Jeff and new Jeff. It's like, no, because he's a little bit older than the rest of us. He doesn't want to be called old Jeff either. We didn't really decide this. We discovered that new temporary Jeff was not the sharpest knife in the drawer. And the way we figured this out is that he comes in on his first day. Now, at this point, he's already filled out an application. He's been in the store. He's had an interview with the manager. So you would expect that he would kind of sort of know what was going on a little bit. He comes in, and the very first thing he asks me is, what am I going to be doing here? Fixing stuff? And we're like, no, you're a sales associate. What would you be fixing? Like, we sell video games. Why are you fixing stuff? So we kind of explain the job to him as best as we can. But we realized right away that now, okay, we have Jeff and we have Dumb Jeff. And then for the rest of the Christmas season, it was just to see who could get Dumb Jeff the worst. So back then, we would shrink wrap all the games that got traded into us to make them seem less used, I guess. We're very open about the fact that they were used games, but they'd still come wrapped up. So we had to do that in the back. We had a little shrink wrap machine, and it's like a little plastic bag when you put it through a device, and there's a hot wire that cuts it and seals it at the same time. And then there's just a little bit of plastic left over. Well, my friend Paul, who was a Christmas temp from the prior year that we copped, coolest guy, just smart, funny, and just like very easy to get along with. Nothing rattled him. And he tells Dumb Jeff that the little bits of plastic are too hot to just throw away. So you have to put them in the fridge. First, he doesn't believe Paul. So Dumb Jeff, a little bit smarter than Paul gave him credit for. But Paul shows him by sneaking in the back when Dumb Jeff's not looking and going in the garbage can and taking the heat gun that we used to actually shrink the shrink wrap and melting the garbage bag with it. And then he calls Jeff in the bag. He's like, look what you did. I told you you had to put these in the fridge, and now the garbage is all melted. We could have had a fire. And Paul's like, the other thing that you should probably do to cool them off first is run them under the faucet. So now he's got all these little scraps of plastic, and he's holding them under the sink, and then he's putting them in the fridge, and they're freezing and turning into ice. And finally, like, a couple days later, our manager's just like, why is there, like, icy plastic in the freezer? We're like, because Dumb Jeff. Who's Dumb Jeff? The temp that you hired. He's dumb.
Dumb Jeff's probably now like a Fortune 500 company manager.
I think probably Dumb Jeff works off the books fixing stuff for people.
You've got plumbing problems? Call Dumb Jeff Plumbing.
I'm good at fixing stuff, and I'll make sure that you don't burn down your house with melted plastic.
Well, that was fun. Christmas adventures. So, on your list, what's like the most horrific event?
I think the real horror stories are not... I think we've taken care of anything that would be like actually like disturbing. We did prank each other a lot because, like I said, it's a bunch of 20-year-old guys working together. You get on each other's nerves a little bit, and then like somebody's bugging you for a while, and then you prank them and it gets better. And the one thing that we had in the store, they renovated the store the one year, and in the meantime, they set us up in an abandoned KB Toys that was, I mean, no joke, it was probably 6 times larger than the store we normally had. Our regular EB store, our back room was just big enough for the shelves and for one person to scoot by the shelves if they turned sideways. 2 people couldn't be back there. You couldn't walk like a normal person. You had to like crab scuttle through the back. It was that narrow. Our KB Toys store that we had for 2 months while they renovated, we could play football in the back room. Like we just had this gigantic stock room, and like we only had like enough stock to fill that tiny space we had at the old one. So it's just this big empty room. So it was fun, but it was also a lot of ground to cover. And we, for demos, we didn't have like ceiling mounted TVs at the time like they do now. We just had one TV on the counter that was something called the GX TV, which was this TV that it had a cover, and the cover would open up, and it was actually like these 2 giant speakers. It was super, super loud. The one time after the store was closed and the mall was empty, we turned the volume up like as high as we could and like put on like Turok Dinosaur Hunter with the cheat code, so we had all the weapons, and loaded up the rocket launcher and did it like full volume, and like windows rattled across the mall. Like it was just this stupidly loud TV. Well, my buddy Joe, who's, I keep saying it, but really, like, I made a lot of good friends working at the EB, and they're still my friends now, and they're all great guys. Joe's awesome. Joe is like this odd mix between like a super nerd, like a like anime and RPG kind of nerd, and then like this like heavy metal badass. Like he's this really weird combo of the two. He's awesome. But Parasite Eve had just come out, and it was a Square game, and he loves Square games, and he put it in the demo unit. And the demo for this was just like the opening theme movie for like 3 minutes, title screen, loop it. So every like 3.5 minutes, you're hearing the Parasite Eve theme. Drove me nuts. So I would always turn it off as soon as he like walked away, off, and just nothing on the display. And then he'd come back and be like, Brad, you turned my display off. I want to hear Parasite Eve for the next 6 hours on a loop. And he'd turn it back on. So the one day, he goes in the back room, and I wait until he's all the way, 100 yards away. And I turn the thing off, and I swap the game to NASCAR 98. The intro for that is Molly Hatchet's Flirtin' with Disaster. It's about as far from a Square RPG music as you can get. And turn everything off. He comes back out. And he's like, Brad, you turned the PlayStation off again. And he turns it back on. And he leaves. And he goes back across the stockroom again. And, it takes like a full minute, go through the PlayStation logos and load it up and everything, get the loading screen. And he's about as far away in this giant store as you can be. And all of a sudden you just hear the opening riff of Flirtin' with Disaster. And you hear him scream. He's like, what did you do? He comes running across the store, gets behind the counter. I had wedged the PlayStation into the back corner of the shelf. The opening was too narrow to open up the PlayStation. He couldn't reach it. It took him like probably a good minute or so to finally fish it out of there. And the entire time it's just like, I'm traveling down the road and I'm flirting with disaster. It's just, I hate you so much. I had it so loud that it was going like all the way through the mall. It kind of backfired because it was like a car alarm in a zombie movie. Like all of a sudden, like all these hillbillies just flocked to our store. They're like, you got the new NASCAR game? We're like, this is actually last year's NASCAR game, but would you like to buy it? Joe was not happy with me for swapping out the games. He was especially not happy with me when I caused the redneck zombie invasion 10 minutes later.
But did you sell lots of copies of NASCAR 98?
I think we probably sold out of copies of NASCAR 98, so at least we didn't have those to deal with.
Well, you were a good salesman. That's the moral of this story.
Yeah, I mean, we got like our $2 markup on each copy. We, probably made the store about $40 that day.
Good, and you got rid of all the NASCAR games.
Yeah, which was also nice.
Those hot NASCAR games. I don't remember that Parasite Eve demo.
This was the game. Like, he would just, like, take our display copy of the game. Because we would take the game out of the copies that were on the shelves. We'd take the game out, and you're not supposed to do this, but as long as you had a couple of wrapped copies in stock, you could take the one that was the shelf copy and put it in the PlayStation and use it as a demo. As long as nobody came in and, like, bought a brand new game and, like, saw you fish it out of the PlayStation under the counter, and they're like, hey. Yeah, Dirty Secret of EBs in the late 90s. Those shelf copies probably, if it was a cool game, it probably ended up in the demo unit at some time. So they're like, oh, this is unwrapped, but it's never been used? Probably was.
So it was just the opening title loop of Parasite Eve. It wasn't like the demo did?
No.
I played Parasite Eve, and I don't think I'm hardcore enough to enjoy that for that many hours.
No. And me and Joe are like polar opposites on that. Like, I'm very sensitive to like hearing the same song over and over and over. It drives me crazy, and he loves it. So, there was always a little bit of a point of contention for us anytime a Square game came out, and I'm like, I don't want to hear the Final Fantasy VIII theme again.
No one should have to be exposed to the Final Fantasy VIII disc in any way, shape, or form.
Really anything that made a loud noise was, gonna cause trouble. There was one summer, probably 99, it was when Pokemon got super, super, super popular. And all of a sudden the store, anything Pokemon, the store would sell. And, it was like the cards, the games. It was also weird stuff. And the weirdest thing we got was like this like personal alarm. It was like a keychain, and it was magnetized or whatever. And if you like pulled the key ring out of this like little Pikachu statue, it made like this super loud noise to like scare away attackers or whatever. So for whatever reason, we said, oh, we can definitely sell that because a big part of our customer base are people who like Pokemon and are worried about being attacked. I guess was the logic behind it. Either that or the company buyer just went to a trade show and was like, give me one of every Pokemon thing that you have. I don't care what it is or how weird it is.
I think that's probably the answer to that question right there.
Yeah, company buyer was probably like, went to an event, went to the party and got just blasted, and then went back out on the sales floor and was like, give me all the Pokemon stuff that you got. I'm a lawyer. I work for Radio Shack.
I need those Pokemoms right now.
Anyway, we had what we dubbed the Pikachu grenade, because you would take the pin out of it and it would screech and make horrible noises. And a fun thing to do with the Pikachu grenade was to find a way to secure it to the floor, but mount the pin to the gate that opens the store. So that somebody would come in the morning, unsuspectingly, open the gate, Pikachu alarm goes off, screeching all through the mall, can't figure out what it's coming from, why it's happening. Guards come rushing down because they think one of the stores is being broken into at 10 in the morning. And it was a good way to wake up, the employees that weren't quite fully awake yet.
That sounds horrific.
It was bad. I think we only did that once, and then we were told not to do that. We did that to the assistant manager, who is really laid back, not super authoritative kind of guy. We were all friends with him, but this was like the one time that he was like very serious. He's like, don't ever do that with the Pikachu ever again.
It's really hard to be stern and serious when you're like, listen guys, the thing you did with that Pikachu was inappropriate. You're like, Pikachu.
It's really hard to be stern and serious when like you're like super good friends with all the other employees, and like I got him that job originally, and like we played hockey together. And it's just like, Brad, I need to actually be your boss for a second. You can't do the Pikachu thing ever again. I was like, this is Paul's idea.
Throw him under the bus. I went into an EB once to buy the Pikachu edition of Pokemon.
Okay.
For a kid for his birthday. And I didn't know what Pokemon was at the time, but all I knew is on the birthday wish list was Pokemon Pikachu edition.
Okay.
So I'm like, yeah, can I get this? And they're like, Pokemon, huh? Into it? It's like, I don't know what it is. Like, sure you don't. And they kept winking. I'm like, why are you winking at me? So I don't know what this is. He asked for his birthday. He's like 9. Sure he is. What? That was the store that I canceled Diablo 2 at, my pre-order, because it was Babbage's? It's either Babbage's or GameStop. They sort of made up a release date to get your money, and finally Blizzard came out on the internet, back when you had to dial into it, and was like, we have no release date. Stop giving your money to GameStop for a pre-order.
We used to get, once a week, we would get a list of the release dates for upcoming games. And there was kind of a secret code where if it said the 1st of the month, it'll come out sometime this month, hopefully. And if it said the 15th, it'll come out like 6 months from now, hopefully. Games got delayed a lot back then. Like these days, you hear a release date, it's usually pretty solid unless there's some kind of disaster. But back then, like release dates were kind of vague for the most part. They didn't, only in a couple of like really high profile events like Final Fantasy VII or Mortal Kombat did they actually like market a specific release date. Usually it was just like, hopefully this fall.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And it's like Half-Life, the original. It'll be in time for Christmas. And yeah, by like a week.
Yeah. I actually, the last time I was at GameStop to purchase something, I met a gem of an employee. They had Lords of the Fallen Complete Edition. And I was like, hey, do you price match Amazon? And boy, he laid into me about the evils of Amazon and how they were choking out small businesses.
Yes. What store were you in again?
Yeah, well, I mean, GameStop is dying, so...
Yeah, but it's not like it was like some guy that lives in your town opened a game store and it was GameStop.
So he just, 3 minutes just laid into me about how I was ruining gaming and physical discs, and he got done, and I was just staring at him. I was like, well, you could have got the $24 or Amazon, and I held up my phone and I hit the add to cart button. Could get the money. And I just dropped the game on the counter. I didn't even go put it back. And as I was walking out, I was like, "You're a real jerk, you know that?" I just turned around and gave him a thumbs up and hit the confirm purchase button and kept walking. I mean, I thought it was an innocent question. Do you price match? It's like only like $5 difference. And that $5 set him off, apparently.
When I first started there, it was a privately held company. It was like one family that started EB still owned it. And then after I worked there for about 2 years, they released their stock publicly. And everything changed. You know, all of a sudden, it was just like... The view gets a lot more short-term when a company whose stock is publicly owned because that stock's being traded all the time. So, like, it's just like, what profits can you get, like, right now? You're not worried about down the road. It started out as a really, really cool company to work for. And, yeah, I can't speak for every single EB employee, you know, that worked in 1997. But I think overall there was a, you know, fair amount of loyalty and, like, you know... Things that happened to the store, we kind of sometimes would take a little personally, you know, like that guy kind of did. But, you know, there's no excuse for that, especially like in the age of Amazon. Like GameStop isn't, you know, some guy's company that, you know, tries to do the best for their customers. Like GameStop is like very profit focused and short term driven and not really like worth crusading against Amazon for.
Yeah, I'd say like 96 through 2002. I had a GameStop I went to and like just the coolest guys there. Actually two, one where I live now and one in Nashville. And just the coolest guys, go in there, hang out with them, joke with them.
Yeah.
You know, take a few games home. But that store changed into something dark and gross over the last couple of years where even when we're at the mall, I don't even really want to just go in and look at things because the employees seem sad.
Yeah, you know, the changes at Electronics Boutique were happening while I was there. You know, all of a sudden it was like, oh, you know, try to get an add-on sale for this totally unrelated thing. And, you know, I didn't mind selling. I wasn't awesome at it, but I didn't mind, you know, like a customer comes in, they don't really know what they want. You help them out and they buy a thing, get a sale, they're happy. Like that was a good feeling. But then all of a sudden it was like, try to get them to buy like a printer, like while they're picking up their car. It's like, why? Why do we have printers?
I want a copy of Black, and do you have an HP LaserJet?
Oh, man, this is my lucky day. I was going to get in trouble if I didn't sell one of these. Yeah, one thing that they had us do is we went from, you know, somebody would call, you just pick up the phone, and my greeting was just, you know, Electronics Boutique, Brad speaking. And then all of a sudden they're like, and that was, you know, everybody's greeting except with their own name, except for Dumb Jeff, just called himself just Jeff. It didn't say Dumb Jeff speaking. But somewhere along the line, they started telling us, well, you gotta try to upsell in your phone greeting. Because what you want when you call a store to find out like how late they're open is to like get a 30-second sales pitch. And what we ended up doing is sometimes they'd specify games. Like if Madden was about to come out, it would be like, you know, thanks for calling EB where you can pre-order Madden. But sometimes they're just like, pick an item in your store that, you know, you want to try to move and mention that in your greeting. So we had this wire bin on wheels that we kept at the front of the store that was the bargain bin. It was just full of like garbage software that we couldn't sell. So we would pull stuff out of the garbage bin and it would be like, well, thank you for calling Electronics Boutique where you can get a copy of Roll Cage for the PC for $4.99. What can I help you with? And, you know, we just tried to find the more and more obscure stuff. I think it was Paul discovered that it was even better to find stuff with the longest, most ridiculous title. And I started like combining things and be like, you know, where you can get a copy of Army Men 3D and A Bug's Life for $9.99.
Yeah, when I'd call my GameStop and, you know, they'd be like, thanks for calling GameStop, this is, and then I'd just go, nope. Well, you've told all your retail stories, and I have one.
Okay.
And you know a lot about the footballs.
Yes.
So I lived in Nashville for a while, and I worked at Sam's Club, and one of the upsides of being internet savvy is I read a lot, and I knew more about HDTVs than everyone else. So when the HDTVs came in, they put me on that because I could talk about them. So this guy came up to me and he asked me some questions and I'm answering them all, you know. He was a super nice guy. And he's like, okay, I want 2. And this was like, this is 2006. 2 32-inch HD TVs. And I'm just like, whoa, I just filled my quota for the day. So we load them up, take them to the register, and I release them. And, he leaves a story. He's like, thanks, man. And he leaves, and I'm headed back to electronics. And I get bombarded by, like, every salesperson asking me, what was the guy like? I'm like, what are you talking about? All these questions, and they knew his name, and I was like, I didn't know his name. Apparently he was the defensive running back for the Tennessee Titans.
Okay, that's not a position in football.
Or a running back for the Tennessee Titans. Okay, word running back in name. And they wanted to know all this stuff, and I was like, I don't know, he bought 2 TVs, and I walked him out, and they're like, oh man, did you get his autograph? I was like, I literally have no idea who you were talking about. No, I did not. And
was it Travis Henry?
I do not remember his name.
Okay, fair enough.
They were shouting at me a lot for not, like, getting his life story and becoming his best friend forever.
Well, obviously.
Actually, a couple days later, or a little while later, a manager told us he was going to hang a plasma TV on a rack on the back of a pickup truck and throw a tailgate party in the parking lot of Sam's Club in Nashville in summer. And me and the other TV guy was like, dude, you can't do this. This is a bad idea. And he's like, why? And we're like, those things produce an enormous amount of heat. You're going to take it outside in the summer in Tennessee. You are going to fry that TV. He's like, no, it'll be fine. Like 3 hours later, our manager, the big manager, comes over, furious at us that we broke a TV.
Uh-oh.
And we're like, what are you talking about? And he's like, the TV you sent outside. And we're like, we didn't send it outside. The manager we told not to do it threw us under the bus.
Oh.
And then we explained to him the whole story. And we walked up to the TV and you could smell melting plastic on the inside. And the screen was bubbling.
Oh, man.
We're like, oh, that one's done.
Our store was actually pretty close to where the Buffalo Bills played. So we would get Bills players coming in after practice. It was a couple of stars came in once or twice, but our more regulars were usually like backups or like guys that were starters but not stars. And it was kind of fun because we had one guy come in and the new Madden had just come out and he was a backup offensive lineman. Huge guy, like 7 feet tall, 300 pounds, all muscle. And he's watching the animations in Madden and he's just like, oh, look at that. Like, they actually have the blocking right. They actually, like, hit like this. And he, like, demonstrates on my coworker, who is, like, my size, scrawny and less than 6 feet tall. And he, like, knocked him across the store. He flew like a rag doll and hit the wall and crumpled. And it was just like, all right, Corey, I don't think you know your own strength when you're not, like, facing another, like, football player. The best was we had this guy who was a super, super nice guy. But he was a backup defensive back, and he was probably, like, the last guy to make the team. Like, if they ever, like, needed to get another player, this would be the guy that they would cut to make room for whoever they needed. He bought a Dreamcast, and he pre-ordered NFL 2K, and he was very excited because this was going to be the first video game that he was going to be in. And he's, like, so excited, like, I'm going to, like, get my brother a copy and show my mom and everything. Like, I'm in a video game. It'd be like me or you, like, being in a game. Like, this was a huge deal to this guy because he was as marginal of an NFL player as you could be. Barely making the team on the Buffalo Bills. Like, that's just the lowest rung in the league. And great guy. So he gets his Dreamcast, he picks it up, he picks up his NFL 2K. He's like, can I see it? Like, so we pop it in, and we load up the Bills, and we're going through the roster, and we find him. And his rating was like, it was like a 50. Like, it's the kind of rating that you didn't even think, like, they put somebody that low of a rating in a video game. And, like, he's just like, oh. Like, you can just see him, like, he just, like, died a little inside. And I'm like, man, Really sorry, man. You know, I don't think this is truly accurate. I've seen you play, you know, in garbage time of games that you're getting blown out of, and you're better than a 50. You're like a 52, I would say.
Customers walk in and you're just hugging a football player while he's sobbing. I'm not a 50, man. So, all right, Brad, we're running a little long here.
Man, I didn't even get to tell you about No One Can Stop Mr. Domino.
All right, I'm pausing the end of the show. Tell me about No One Can Stop Mr. Domino.
All right, one final story. PlayStation game came out probably like 1999 or so, called No One Can Stop Mr. Domino. That was the title of the game. It was an okay game, but we were really smitten with the title. And one night, closing up the store, Joe's working the next morning, so it's always... You know, he's a good guy to try to have a little bit of fun with. I take the copy of Mr. Domino, and I place it on the floor in the middle of the store. Wait till the next time that I'm closing and Joe's opening the next day. I take the copy of Mr. Domino, and I place it on the floor about a foot closer to the gate. And I do this like every night. And he's like, something weird's going on with the Mr. Domino. It's like, it's trying to escape the store. I'm like, you probably can't stop it. He's like, what? And I'm just like... You can't. It's Mr. Domino. You can't stop him. And, you know, every night that he was going to follow after me, I just put it closer. I'd start putting notes on him like, I'm going to get away. You can't stop me. And no one could stop it. And then somebody bought the game and it left the store forever.
That was an anticlimactic ending. I thought you were going to tell me that you put it outside the gate and he got there and he's like, what the crap? Oh, all right, Brad. That was... an adventure through retail of the EB of yesteryear. Kind of miss them.
Yeah, you know, it was working there. It was a really fun place on my nights off to, like, go hang out. It's like, don't really normally want to hang out at where you work, but, like, I knew everybody there, and I didn't have to do anything. I just kind of stand in the corner and, you know, like, shoot the breeze with them in between customers, which, after 8 o'clock, was pretty infrequent. Yeah, I miss EB. I miss EB the way it used to be before it got swallowed up by GameStop and turned into a sad misery factory.
Yeah, that's a good review of GameStop. Sad misery factory. I guess hopefully you've got more stories. We can revisit this later because I had a lot of fun here hearing about retail. If the listeners want to get a hold of us, you can check out our show notes, which is at our site or in your favorite podcast listening app. Come visit our YouTube page. It's full of YouTube goodness. You got anything final, Brad?
No, that's about it. Christmas retail shopping season's here. Try to be nice to the employees if they're not going on rants about Amazon at you for no good reason. Try not to threaten to break anybody's neck in the parking lot, like happened to me on multiple occasions.
Yeah, that's very good messaging. Be nice if you're out there Black Fridaying, because the only person who looks stupid when you're yelling at an employee is you. The employee is just there because they have to be there. They aren't there to ruin your day. They are just there to swipe your card and give you your packages. So be chill, people. With that, I am Donald. That was employee number 452, Brad. And we will see you next week.